60% of CEOs say that managing people performance is their greatest weakness. And at the heart of managing performance is the feedback conversation. And when we talk about accountability, which is actually one of the main things that drives our business, that all centers around how we give feedback to the people in our team. We struggle so much because we're trying to maintain this balance between being seen as an empathetic and connected leader with actually getting things done at the end of the day. And it's something that most of the CEOs and senior business leaders that I work with tell me they struggle with. So let's start to break it down, because where we make the mistake is that we either go too hard and too direct and blunt as a way of driving performance, and there's the risk of damaging the relationship and not having that same level of trust that we need in order to drive a high-performing team. Or we tend to go too far the other way, and we're too soft, we're too supportive, we're trying to be encouraging as a way of trying to get better performance, and that doesn't work either. And so at the end of the conversation, there's some vague conversation about what we want, but none of that really lands. So we need to find a way to sit in that middle ground. I've got this 6-step process that the leaders that I work with find extremely helpful at getting over that gap between getting things done and still maintaining good connection with the people in their team. The very first step of the 6 is not about process, it's about mindset. Like, where is our head at before we even have this conversation? And there's 2 things that I think we need to be thinking about as we approach the conversation. The first part about mindset is care and concern for the person we're giving feedback. Not in a way of trying to soften the message, but we're there to try to help them. We want them to be performing better, because that helps them feel more successful. And the more successful they are, the more successful we are. So it's about trying to advise them to help get the most out of their performance. So when we approach it with care and concern for the individual, we know that we're approaching it with the right way, in a way in which we're going to help them be open to the feedback, as opposed to being defensive because they just feel we're being critical without any true substance. The other aspect of mindset is curiosity. Like, we might know what we've observed, or we might know what's showing up in a KPI or some other performance measure that we've got, but we don't know the whole story. So when we approach that conversation with curiosity and to be inquisitive about the situation so we can improve our understanding, we know we're going to get to a better outcome. And it also helps ensure that we aren't predetermining the outcome, because there's always something to learn. We don't know what's going to come up in this conversation that might influence the final decision that we make. So mindset is really important at setting this whole process up for success. Step 2 is, what's the issue? What are we here to talk about? What's the problem? Is it around performance? Is it around attitude? Is it a process thing? Let's just label it 2 to 3, 4 words about what the meeting is about, or what we're wanting to bring up in this conversation. Then we need to explore the impact. I'm concerned about this problem. I'm concerned about this performance measure because of the impact that it's having on you, on the team, on the business, on the customers. Why is this an issue? It's not just the incident, it's what's the impact of that. So we're creating context about what we're talking about. And then once I've shared that, the next thing I do is say, well, what's your take on this? So often I have conversations with my clients and I ask them to explain, well, how did the feedback go when they've been talking about a problem with an employee? And they spend the next couple of minutes telling me about what they said and how they approached it and whatever. And then I say, well, what did the employee say? What was their feedback? And 9 times out of 10, I get blank stares. So we think about the feedback about wanting to be strong and wanting to be confident, and it's all about what we say. And nothing's further from the truth. What we say, those first 2 steps, are really setting us up for the most important part of that feedback exchange. Because now I want to hear from them. What's their take on it? Are they going to introduce other information that I wasn't aware of that is perhaps going to influence my decision about how we're going to move forward with this? It also gives me a chance to see, are they taking responsibility for the issue, or are they starting to pass it on to somebody else or some other situation? This is where we start to learn what's really going on. And if they so now we have a conversation. They might give their side of things. I'm going to ask some questions, because my goal is to seek understanding. I want to have a really good picture of what's happened, why it happened, why they chose the path that they did, why they made the decisions that they made. And so once we've had this conversation, now I'm fully aware of all the facts. And from that, I can make a good decision. So First step was mindset. Step 2 was what's the issue? Step 3, what's the impact? Step 4 is getting their reflection. So now I know exactly what's going on. So where do we go from here? Well, I'm going to ask them, well, what do you think you should be doing about this? Because this is also giving me a chance to see what their response and their level of responsibility is. And once they've shared their opinion, I might accept that. I might say, well, look, that sounds great. Let's go ahead with that. And I'm going to check in with you in a couple of days to see how that went. So the final step is that feedback, the accountability piece. I'm going to check that whatever action we've agreed is actually going to happen. And I'll probably follow up that meeting with just a quick email, a couple of dot points about what we've agreed and how we're going to move forward. But let's say their suggestion isn't really quite what I'm looking for. So I might suggest a change to that, a slight modification. And I might say, well, what if you did this, or why don't you try that? And so we continue the conversation. So we're both agreed on the outcome and what next steps are. And then we follow on with the accountability piece in a couple of days' time. Or it's such a serious issue that I need to take control and be very directive about what the next step should be. Maybe it's a serious safety issue. Maybe it's a serious staff or customer issue. And I'm not really prepared to negotiate now that I've got the full issue. And so I can be quite directive now. I say, no, look, what I really need you to do is A, B, C, and that needs to be done by within 24 hours or next week or whatever. So I'm clear on the actions. I'm clear on the timeframes and when it's going to be due. They know we're going to follow up and have another conversation about this. And so those 6 steps close the whole loop and ensure that we have a meaningful conversation, agreed on the outcomes, and we're going to close the loop with accountability. Now, so many clients I talk to and they start to implement this process in full tell me it has taken so much pressure off them in terms of driving performance in the business, that they no longer feel that they're trying to just intimidate their staff or impose their will on what should happen next. It becomes much more collaborative, and we're approaching it as a problem-solving exercise, not a punishing exercise, which is what most feedback conversations end up to. I hope you found this helpful. There'll be some links below to help you find more information about this process, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.